Hello, good afternoon. My name is Philip. This afternoon we'll talk about one important topic in our daily nursing care we call fluid balance. As we all know, even when we are normal walking about, there is a need for fluid to be in a balance in our body. The same way when we are sick, there is a play between the balance of fluid in our system, and that balance is very critical. And that is why when a patient is in the sick bed, it's often very necessary for us to maintain a fluid balance. What do we mean by fluid balance? A fluid balance, actually we are concerned about when the patient is admitted, for instance in the case of COVID-19, and we may want to give, or we may be obliged to give fluid at some point. At this crucial moment, when you give fluid, you need to account of the amount of fluid you are giving into the system, because we don't want the system to be overloaded. And therefore, when we give any amount of fluid, that amount of fluid needs to be recorded on a chart. Once you record any amount of fluid that you give to the patient, it is also very essential, very necessary for the nurse to monitor what the patient will give out in the form of vomiters, in the form of urine, or whatsoever. That's why it is often necessary for us to maintain a fluid balance chart. And the fluid balance chart has two main categories. The first category is where you may have to give a fluid, and as I earlier on said, when you give a fluid, for instance you've given normal saline, it is important that the date you are giving the normal saline is noted. The time you are giving the normal saline is also important to be noted. And the amount of the normal saline you are putting up is also important to be noted. The other column is the fluid out. For instance, when you give a patient 500 ml of fluid, maybe within 1 or 2 hours, and that patient pass out urine, there is need for us to monitor the amount of urine that the patient is passing out, so as to maintain the balance of fluid. You will be monitoring the amount of fluid you have given to see whether this patient has actually taken that same amount of fluid out. There are fluid that we normally give to our patients. It can be normal saline or any of the IV fluids as we have in the hospitals. It can also be our local fluids like tea or pap prepared from home. It can be ordinary water. It can be also fluid from other medications like metronidazole and ciprofloxacin drips, and it can also be our popular fluid, which is ORS. In case you have like the tea to give, you always consider the cup of tea to be 250 ml. And in case you have to give pap, also often measure in a cup, and we consider that cup to be 250 ml. For water, of course, you can be able to measure. And if you are giving a plastic of water, the plastic bag of water is always 250 ml. It's not up to 500, it's 250 ml. And of course, we all know if you are giving drugs like metronidazole drip, it has a measurement. It is 100 ml, and of course for ciprofloxacin drip as well, it is up to 100 ml. Now, to maintain an accurate fluid balance chart, the responsibility does not only lie on one shift. As we all know, we have 3 shifts across the hospital department. So therefore, it's a concerted effort from all the shifts. It is possible that one shift might start with a fluid, but it might not be finished during that shift. So therefore, the initiating shifts have the obligation to record what they have put up. But in case that patient needs to give fluid out in the form of urine or in the form of vomiters, as I said earlier, and that happens to occur in the next shift, then it is the responsibility of that shift to record whatever that patient has given out. So in order for us to maintain an accurate fluid balance chart, it should be a concerted effort from all the shifts, as I said earlier. And the total amount of fluid balance, of fluid in and fluid out, can be calculated from 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. the next morning, because the shift starts, we assume the shift starts from 8 in the morning, and then the night nurse is handing over at 8 the next morning. So therefore, for us to calculate our fluid balance, or what was given and what was taken out, we need to consider this 24-hour period, and then we see what is the load of the fluid in the patient. Has the patient given out more than what was taken, or has the patient given out less than what was taken? That is what we call a fluid balance chart. Having maintained that, having monitored that, it is now the responsibility of the nurses to include that in their reporting to the doctor during rounds every day, so that will give the doctor a clue as to whether to prescribe more fluids or to reduce, the intake of fluid. Now I will move on to the practical aspect. I'll move on to the practical aspect where I'll show you where and how we are supposed to monitor or record the fluids that we are giving to our patients every day. Now, as I was explaining, in case the early shift are on at 8 o'clock, and say today is the 22nd of May 2020, this date is to be correctly written, and the time we will be putting up the fluids, let me say within the early shift, is 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Now let's assume the type of fluid we are giving in this instance is normal saline. Normal saline. We indicate the type of fluid. Normal saline. Okay? And now we need to clearly also indicate the amount. We know we have normal saline and a 1000 ml bottle and also a 500 ml bottle, but I think the most common one now is 500 ml. So whatever the case might be, you write the amount of normal saline that you've got. This is the first part of the chart that we call fluid in. And now, for the fluid out, this other section, this other part, the right-hand corner part of the chart is called the fluid out, which indicates whatever fluid that this patient takes out needs to be monitored. For instance, on the 22nd May at 10 a.m. normal saline was hung up. On this same date, for instance, let's say at 22nd 5/2020, now at 2 p.m. this patient passes out urine of 250 ml. This is urine, type of fluid passed, urine, and now the amount 250 ml. This is clearly written, for the next people coming on shift to see that yes, this patient passed out urine of 250 ml. And after every reading of the fluid out chart, after every recording of the fluid out chart, for instance, during the early shift, they've recorded 250 ml of urine being passed out, they need to empty the urine bag. there is need to empty the urine bag. You don't leave the urine in while you record the amount that you noted. Immediately after you record the amount you noted, you empty the urine bag. Okay? At the end of the 24-hour period, now you come back and see. You do your calculation. Total amount of fluid given to this patient is 500 mils. 500 mils. And now, what did the patient give out is 250 mils. Meaning, this patient still have some fluid within the system. Now, giving this feedback to the doctor, we'll have the discretion to either add another fluid based on other factors or conditions of the patient, or reduce the fluid intake. And make sure always one chart goes for one patient. You can never do one chart for two patients. One chart is always for one patient. You make sure you record the name of the patient, take the age of the patient, the weight. You know, it is also possible that we can monitor fluid in and fluid out through the weight, but we want to take care through the fluid chart. But it is also important that on admission you record the weight of the patient, and it indicates the sex of the patient, either male or female, the folder number, and of course the ward number. I want to thank you very much, and I hope this message makes it very clear for us nurses to be keenly focusing on charting or maintaining our fluid balance chart.